it. There we go. Yes. So for many of us, we could potentially have back problems, and I think the first step is to start to become aware of what irritates you, what aggravates your back, what are you doing. You might think, "Oh, I'll just get a massage and it'll make it all better." But really, a massage or anything else you do is not going to make it better if you still continue the pattern of what's causing the challenges to begin with. So really the detective work in the very beginning of trying to work with any challenging orthopedic problem in your body, but especially with your back, is to try to figure out what are the patterns that I'm doing that are making this aggravated or worse, and how can I shift that, and then how can I create support systems around what's wrong. So typically, having a strong core is very much a part of maintaining a stable back. But today we're going to focus a little bit more on releasing the back than necessarily stabilizing, although we'll do a little bit of that as well. So I want you to, as we move slowly in our practice, I want you to really let the primary focus of your practice be awareness. What makes my back feel better? What makes my back feel worse? What is soothing? What is helping? And sometimes we don't know these things until 5 hours later, or 1 hour later, or 2 days later. So it's not always, an instantaneous response to something like a trigger or a help. So, but just try to start becoming as aware as you possibly can for the ways in which you are supported. Okay. All right. So the very first thing is to sit up on a good cushion. So if you sit on the ground, your chances of having good alignment in your spine is much less than if you're sitting up on something. I'm on a bolster, which is actually not my favorite thing to sit on. My meditation cushion is not in this room, but that would be what I'd prefer to sit on. You find your favorite thing. It could be a block, it could be, a blanket or whatever it is. All right. So once you get on top of whatever you are on top of, pay attention to where your feet are. See if your feet are kind of tucked under your calves. And it might feel nice to draw your feet in a little bit more so that your feet are actually underneath your knees instead of kind of like right here. So imagine these are my legs. Let's see what we can do to have our feet kind of go a little further under our knees. And then you can take a rolled blanket or something and kind of, here, I'm going to back up so you can see what I'm doing. You can see my knees now. So as you have that posture of feet underneath your knees, you could take a rolled blanket of some kind and have a little support that kind of tucks underneath. Let me back up even more. So that kind of tucks underneath so that you have a little extra support. So, this is often how I'll sit for meditation. You want to make sure that you can still have your knees either in line with your hips like mine are, or if you don't have that support, maybe a little lower than your knees. If your knees are up here, higher than your hips, you need to come higher in your seated posture. Okay. So once you get your legs organized in a comfortable place, now check in with your pelvis. Are you able to have a neutral pelvis? Do you feel yourself rolling back? Do you feel yourself rolling forward? Are you leaning into one hip or the other? Are you have some torsion where one hip wants to go forward of the other? So experiment and find what works for you, where you feel at ease in your body. And then once you've got your pelvis organized, we're just kind of going up the channels. Start with your legs and your feet, moving to your pelvis. And now we can kind of examine our back itself. Maybe you tend to want to tip your pelvis forward or roll back, and having that neutrality is something new to kind of figure out in the spine. So you should have a neutral lumbar spine. So there's a slight curve in it, and you should feel like your shoulders can land over your hips instead of leaning forward or leaning way back. So have that alignment. And then notice if you kind of slouch or slunch, or if you push your ribs out forward and kind of over exaggerate all your curves, So just find neutrality and let your collarbones broaden and your shoulder blades drop down. Then discover what your head's doing. Is it over your shoulders or your ears over your shoulders? And once you have all this alignment, rest within it if you can. And it may not be, your back might be screaming at you right now, in which case make an adjustment, change, go lie on your back, stand up. It doesn't have to always be a seated posture to begin. Keep your face relaxed and soft. And within the structure of support you've just cultivated, let's breathe. Notice if your diaphragm is able to move freely and well, or if you have, any tension along your diaphragm. Sometimes diaphragmatic tightness can contribute to back pain as well. Do you like to have your palms up or your palms down, which keeps your heart open and your breathing in good form? Notice if you want to creep forward, if your body tends to lean forward when you're not paying attention, or if you slump, or if you roll in your pelvis, like where are your tendencies? And it's okay to feel that you have to kind of strive for posture, especially if these muscles are weakened. If you don't sit well, typically the muscles that help you sit well can be fatigued easily. And it might be more comfortable to just kind of go into your habituated pattern. So let's resist that if we can. Find yourself moving into breath. Press your palms together at your heart. Bow in. Offer an intention. Let's release the hands. And we'll find our way onto our back. All right, so as you lie down on your back, let's start out as we typically do, kind of stretching and lengthening through our spine. Pay attention, as our primary goal in our practice today is awareness of what makes our spine feel good, what makes our spine feel a little trouble. Make sure that even the transitions can be a part of that process too, not necessarily just the postures. So how does this feel in your body? Does lying supine make your spine feel good or not so good? Do you need to bend your knees, or is it okay to have your legs straight? What happens when you reach your arms overhead? What happens to the spine? Does it feel better? Does it, having that little arc in your thoracic spine give you a little bit of energy or a little bit of zest? And we're reaching one side and then reaching the other side. And as we do this, as we stretch one heel and lift the other hip, and stretch the other heel and lift the other hip, we're getting a lot of movement in our low back here. How does that feel? Okay, relax that. And let's go ahead and bring our knees into the air, feet flat on the ground. Just pause in this position for a moment and notice, how does your back feel when your knees are bent? Is there an immediate release of some kind? Does it change the shape of your spine in a positive or a negative way? All right, and then we'll draw the knees all the way in. And notice what happens to your back when you do that. What is the sensation you feel? Is it a positive one or not so much? And sometimes you might have pain, but later on it's eased. So just start to get to know, be a detective of your own movement. All right, let's circle the knees while we're here and see if this is soothing for your sacrum to have a little bit of rolling. And maybe it's not. What's soothing to my back may not be soothing to your back. What's soothing to 98% of the people might not be soothing to you. So, try to really be a sleuth of discovering what's good for you. Circle your knees the other way. And if this is a good sensation for your body, relax into it. Let your sacrum, your pelvis, your low back soften. All right, and And let's take our knees away from the midline and swing them back in. Have a trajectory that's fluid, that's circular, not straight lined. Might feel better in the hip joints. Maybe straight lines feel better too. So just see, maybe you'd rather kind of, be on like more of a zigzaggy kind of movement. So dance and play in your own body, discover what feels good. All right, now take the soles of the feet together. We're going to take our two blocks and bring them underneath our outer hips for a moment. Soles of the feet together, a little bit of a Supta Baddha Konasana. And just notice what's here. So obviously it's a little bit of a stretch for your inner groins. Pay attention to, does one leg fall into this position easily? Maybe another does not. These are all clues when you're doing this sleuthing of trying to understand how your pelvis and low back and sacrum and SI joints kind of live. Notice the patterns that are in your body. So if one hip is a little tighter than the other, that's information for you. And then we're going to let go for a breath. Just completely surrender your crown to your tail. Allow your knees to surrender into the pose. And then pick up your knees, move the blocks out of the way, and put your feet hip width apart or a little wider. And we're going to windshield wiper our knees left and right. Some just gentle movement of our spine, some gentle movement of our hips, and also finding this internal rotation. I think it was last week we did some work with some internal rotation. I've had some feedback from that class. I taught it with you all and then also elsewhere. And I got feedback that, oh my gosh, I've never felt so good. And then I've also got feedback that my back hurt the next day. So, just information. When you move in certain ways, information. So try to pay attention to how your practice makes you feel. Drop your knees to one side, let them hang out there. If it's comfortable, pick up. So if you're dropping over to the left, pick up your left foot and put it on the outside of the right knee. So you have that stretch across your hip and some internal rotation. We won't stay here long. Notice what this feels like. And then lift up, and we're going to rock a little bit left and right, and then we'll drop our knees to the other side. If it's comfortable, pick up that foot, put it to the outside of the knee, and you can always use a block and put it under your legs somewhere to help you be supported in this pose if you need it. Open up the hip. How do your two hips feel differently? Does one side feel like, wow, that was a big stretch, and the other side, oh, it's not so much of a stretch? What is the tendencies in your hips and pelvis? All right, and then reach those legs back up, and we're going to bring our knees back into our chest and check on your back. How is it? Right knee coming into the chest, left leg long on the ground, and let's walk around in our ankles, wiggle your toes, move your feet. If anyone was in class, for those of you who were in class with me yesterday, how are your feet feeling today? We did so much work on the feet. Are your feet a little sore or a little achy from what we did? Feel the compression of your knee into your chest. And then switch sides. Left knee in, right leg long. Keep moving your feet around, roll around in your ankles, feel your calves and your shins open up a little bit. That deep compression of the knee into the chest. Right. And then reach out to a star, stretching your body wide. Open your limbs outward. And while we're out here, actually, let's just take a close in first. So knees into your chest, pick up your head, let your back stretch open. And then one more time, stretch out to your limbs wide. And while you're here, internally and externally rotate your femur bones. So you can start with the movement of your feet, but make sure it translates all the way up into your hips as you internally and externally rotate. And then again, knees into your chest. Pick up your head and feel that openness in the back of your body. Release your head down, keep your knees there, and then discover, can I move into happy baby pose, or is that just a little too much for my back and I'd rather let my knees stay right where they are? If you want to grab your feet, you can grab your feet or hold behind your knees, and we're gonna rock a little bit, swaying from side to side. Or not. Everything I say is just a suggestion. The most important thing you can do is be aware of your own body
and kind of cultivate the practice that's right for you, which may not be what I've got on tap, right? So you've got to find what's right for you. If you are in happy baby, dip the tailbone down, see if you can feel a little release under your low back. And then release your legs. One more time, stretch out to a star, big and wide. And then exhale, knees into your chest, round the spine. Let's put your feet on the ground. Okay. So just reviewing a few, I know I've taught this lots to you, but just reviewing a simple little toolkit box when your back is not feeling good. So hold your knees. We're going to take the right hand and scoop it on the top of the shin, right below your kneecap, and your left hand right on the bottom of your femur bone, right above your kneecap. So our hands are in different placements. Our knees are hip width apart and they're in line with each other. So they're not, coming offline. We're going to press our knees and our hands into each other. So our legs are going to be push pulling, so opposite directions. Okay. Check out your SI joints when you do this. What's happening in your core and your back? And then relax. Switch sides. Now our right hand is going to come to the bottom of our femur bone, right above our knee. Left hand scoops to the top of the shin, right below your knee. Press your knees into your hands, hands into your knees. Nothing's moving. The knees stay hip width apart and in line with each other. So this is all isometrics. Flexion on one side, extension, trying to move toward flexion on one side, extension on the other. This is very good for stimulating the muscles that really help us anchor our SI joints in place. One more time each side. Right hand scoops the shin, left hand to the thigh. Press. Make sure you're breathing. Try to keep your neck out of the equation. What are you feeling? And then relax and switch sides again. Scoop your left hand on your shin, right hand on your thigh. Do you have a pattern that's a little more familiar? Does one side feel like, yeah, I got that movement? And another side's like, oh, what am I doing? Just pay attention if you have some discrepancy of kind of nervous system integration. Put your feet on the ground and just relax for a minute. Let your low back soften. Integrate that. Feel a sense of symmetry. We're going to very slowly lift up into a bridge. And our arms are going to come up. You can bring them overhead if you want, but you can also just bring them right up to the sky. Now, don't feel like you have to go super high. Pressing your feet into the ground, and then exhale and lowering. So you bring your arms wherever you want them to be. They can swing all the way overhead as you lift your pelvis, or they can pause somewhere, or they can even just stay on the ground. Finding the movement very slowly. You can move with your breath, or you can stay a little longer than your breath, or longer than one breath, I should say. And just very slowly starting to feel some of those muscles of your back line engage. How is this making your back feel? Is it helpful to move into bridges, or is moving toward a back bend one of those poses that's aggravating? So if it's aggravating, stop. If you're not sure, cautiously move forward. Ground the four corners of your feet. We're going to come up into a bridge and stay there now. So again, we're not coming into our highest bridge ever. We're not in the bridge Olympics, but you want to have a little bit more in this one. So maybe a little bit of a roll of the shoulders, not so much where you're really moving into a deep, deep back bend, but enough to really light up the back line of the body. Pull your feet toward your shoulders a little bit. Feel your hamstrings and your glutes turn on. Do they turn on evenly or no? Imagine a block between your thighs. Integrate your inner thighs to the pose. Try pushing your feet away from you so you feel the work across the front of your quads. And then lastly, try pulling your feet away from each other and wake up those outer hip muscles. And then integrate all of that. Hug all your muscles to your femur bones, all your muscles to your pelvis. How's your breath? And slowly lower your body down. And just pay attention before you move anything, before you immediately go into windshield wipers or something like that, or pull your knees in. Just notice, how did that make my back feel? Breathing deeply. All right, so let's go ahead and find one more star just to stretch out in our body. And then knees into your chest. And let's roll to your side. We're gonna do a lot more on our backs, but let's just get up off the ground for a little bit here. Okay, so I would say cat-cows are one of those super safe poses that you can usually find a little bit of range in, even when you're in a pretty big back spasm. And when you're in a pretty big low back spasm, usually the best thing to do is just rest in constructive rest, which is the, you know, knees up, feet on the floor, or even legs up on something, and just allow your back to rest. But if you can move even just a little bit in a back spasm, sometimes a little bit of cat-cow can just be a really beautiful thing. So you just go to the place of your spinal movements that's comfortable today. And you might find typically that your first round of cat-cow is, this far into flexion and extension. And as you loosen, you can get a little bit more out of the pose. Try not to push your back into extremes, especially if you haven't, done a lot of movement yet. We don't want to force our spines. All right, and then let's find movement that feels good. Maybe a big wag of your tail, maybe some circling of your ribs or your pelvis. Maybe you have some other movement that you just love in your spine. So let some freedom ring in here. What feels good? And even if you think, oh, I have SI joint problems, so I have to focus there. Perhaps focus on your neck movement or your rib cage movement. You can kind of find your way into the rest of your spine through any of the gateways of your spine. So, maybe your on-ramp is in a place that feels really good, not necessarily going right to the bullseye of pain. All right, and then when you're ready, rest back towards child's pose. And yet another really good pose if your body is ready for it to find your way into child's pose. Remember, your knees can be far, your knees can be close. There's so much variation, even in such a simple pose as child's pose. Arms can be overhead and long and stretched. Arms can be more relaxed. Arms can be down at your sides. What is going to help you open up here and let your body breathe? Imagine your breath traveling down your spine like water, all the way to your tail. Now, a few movements of the pelvis. Come up onto all fours. We're going to tuck our tail under a big, strong posterior tilt back towards child's pose. Check out this. Does it feel good? Does it not feel good? Is this something your body should do or no? Come back up onto all fours. Tip the tail, arching the back. So a strong anterior pelvic tilt back towards child's pose. How does your back feel in this position? And just go back and forth a couple of times into this deeply rounded spine, posterior tilt, and then a deeply arched anterior tilt. Which feels better? What makes your back feel good? Maybe it's the combination, right? So just notice what movements aggravate, what movements assist. And I know that the frustrating part is sometimes we just don't know, right? Okay, curl your toes under, lift all the way up to dog pose and feel that extension and length. Find your way into a big, strong, full breath pattern where you're filling your lungs and emptying them. Drop your hand weight and your foot weight. Maybe you can pedal your feet if you want to open up the calves a little bit more. Maybe your other knee bends. Feel the roots drop down, rise up. And walk your feet forward. Come to Uttanasana. Now, sometimes these forward folds can be a lot. Bend your knees. Start to feel that whole back line open from the base of your skull to the bottom of your feet. Maybe a little bit of movement feels good here. Maybe a little movement feels bad here. Okay, so discover what helps you loosen your spine. If it feels good, interlace your hands at the base of your skull and have a little giant, not a giant, weight bearing, allowing the weight of your hand to draw your head down, and then maybe your chin tucks in, stretching those paraspinal muscles. And then place your hands on blocks and feel that extension and length moving forward. Put your hands on blocks instead of your legs so that your hands can be right under your shoulders, and feel that the femur bones draw way back. So sometimes nestling the femur bones in the hip joints, back in the back edge of the hip joints, helps you move from moving the pelvis instead of from the spine. So as we hinge forward into a forward fold, imagine your pelvis is rotating over your femur bones. The pubic bone passes through your inner thighs. We're rolling the pelvis over the femurs and letting the spine, the sacrum, and the spine fall in the same direction. So one of the most challenging things in a forward fold for your back is when your tail pulls downward and your spine pulls downward in the opposite direction. We want our tail to lift. We want our sacrum to lift so it can follow the spine. Another halfway lift. Spine gets long here. Open up the bottom of your feet. And then bend your knees and slowly rise up. So, even something as simple as coming up can be very varied. Some people, I've always been taught that the safest way to get up from a knees bent forward fold is to drop your seat and lift your chest and come up like this. But I know people who are like, no, that hurts my back. I feel better rolling up. So rolling up for me is not good on my spine, but maybe it's great on yours. So try not to always follow a quote unquote prescription of what someone else says is the best way, and really try to discover and experiment what is your best way. Okay. Reaching the arms up, feeling that length, open up through your heart, stretch your chest a little bit. Let's cactus the arms and find that deep squeeze in the back line of the body. And then round in, so it's like a standing cat-cow, arms to touch. Inhale, up again. Big breath, swan dive, bend your knees. Forward fold. Maybe forward folds are terrible and you feel very uncomfortable in them, in which case, never go all the way down. Maybe your half lift is your forward fold. Okay, so find your way, inner thighs rolling back, so there's a little inner spiral. Okay, let's step back to a dog pose. Extending through your spine, feeling that reach in the body, the femur bones up and back. Pay attention to the transitions. Kind of like, the most accidents happen a mile away from home. I would say that there's a lot of potential for accidents in the transitions in your yoga practice. So let's come forward into a plank. You can put your knees down if you need to. And now it's our first kind of cueing into that deep core support. Find your breath. Feel that cylinder of support around you. And then let's lower ourselves down. Bring your forearms onto the ground, a Sphinx pose. You can be low. Pay attention to the angles of your pelvis. So if you just fall and let nothing in your torso work, chances are your low back's going to arc a little bit here. But see what it feels like to ground your legs, to feel your pubic bone lift toward your navel. We're not squeezing our butt cheeks, but our glutes are a little active as we kind of cultivate that angle of our pelvis. And then our heart, we can drag our forearms back toward our hips a little bit and let the heart stretch through, all the while stabilizing our lumbar spine. All right, and then release and relax. Take a second pose, anything you want, a cobra, a wide cobra. What is the best pose for your back? Relax. We're going to bring our left knee up high toward our armpit. Take a look at your knee and just check this out. Does this have ease in your back,
or does this create more strain in your back? Okay. We're gonna turn this into a twist. So take your right arm, bring it over to the left and twist open. Be careful, I have a block behind my back, so that's not a good place for the block to land. And this is a really nice way to welcome a twist into your body. If your back's bothering you, remember that supine twisting is the safest option for you. Once you get seated, especially, but even standing twists can be much more troublesome because gravity is compressing our vertebrae, and then twisting within that compression can be hard. So gravity's not compressing our vertebrae right now. So we can have a little more freedom and safety within the twist. Okay, then come back. Let's roll a bit so that we can lift our left knee up high toward our armpit. See what that feels like. Is that soothing for your back? Is that irritating to your back? See what feels there. And then we'll do the same twist on this side. We're going to take the left arm, cross it over to the right side of the mat and twist open. One of the ways to be very careful in this, it can turn into a very big twist very easily. So be very mindful to take this in increments that's comfortable for your body. Open up your chest. Try not to let your body have a battle between your knee trying to touch the ground and your hand trying to touch the ground. Let your hand win. Okay? So allow the knee to leave the ground to a place of deep comfort where you can breathe into the twist and let the body receive the pose without a battle. Okay, we're going to roll all the way to our back to come out of this pose. You might need to adjust a little bit. Feet on the ground. This time we're going to grab our squishy ball. Okay, and when we come up into a bridge, we're slow, like just a little bridge. Stick your squishy ball underneath your pelvis. All right, now first, just feel a little bit of release, maybe. Maybe you're like, "Ooh, I don't feel stable." And you can always do this on a block too if you feel like you need some more stability, or if you don't have a squishy ball. The less air in the tire, the more stable you will be. The bigger inflated the ball is, the more unstable you will be. So first, just let there be some release. And is it release, or is this tender for you? Okay, we're gonna bring our knees, both of them, toward our chest. Teeny bit of traction in our spine here. And you can choose to do this flat on the ground if the ball is too much for you, or if you don't have a ball. Okay, we're gonna have our knees over our pelvis. If you need a little more support, draw your knees a little toward your chest. And we're going to drop one heel down and lift it back up, and then drop the other heel down. And slowly, slowly. So this is just to kind of put all of our core muscles on line. The deep transverse abdominis, your hip flexors, like your psoas, these deep muscles that are very stabilizing for our low back. Those are probably the top two, the psoas and the transverse abdominis, and then of course your quadratus lumborum too. But let's just feel here all this deep stabilization. Can you feel that your spine has pressure against it, that there's support around your vertebrae? Are you breathing? And maybe your heel doesn't go all the way to the floor. And then, I forgot to say, you can start with your feet on the floor and lift one knee. So now let's try that variation. So this is a little bit easier. So feet on the ground, and you can lift one knee up and then lower that knee down. Now it's easier in the sense that you always have a foot on the ground. This is a lot of deep stabilization work to do this. This is not a small thing. We might feel like, oh, it's such a little thing we're doing. But ultimately, this is a very, very stabilizing action for the deep muscles that support your spine. If you don't have a ball, you can do this on a block, or you can do it on a blanket, something that's just slightly lifting your pelvis up off the ground. Notice if your neck is all tense, okay? If your shoulders, your upper body wants to take over,
stabilize your core muscles so that, you know, the butt stops there a little bit. Your neck does not have to do the work. The foot that's on the ground, is it staying rooted? Can you activate your hamstrings and your glutes on that side to help you integrate? This is the same idea as what we were doing with our hands and our knees, pushing against each other, but we're now taking it into movement instead of an isometric. So go ahead and relax now. We're going to lift up off the ball and lower ourselves down. Now, sometimes when you've been on a rocking ball, when you rest your pelvis down, it's like taking ice skates off and walking. It feels weird. So just let your pelvis rest on the ground. And notice when your knees are up, your feet are grounded, and your pelvis is grounded. How's your back? All right, we're gonna go ahead and find our way over to our side and slowly come up onto all fours and find our way into some wigwags or tail movements. And now we'll find a little bit of different relationship to gravity, but the same action of opposition. So we're gonna come into bird dog. Okay, so our right leg is right back behind us in the air, and our left arm comes out in front of us. And now you can always keep your hand down if you feel like it's too much. But when you come into this pose and you have your right leg back and your left arm front, you're working with opposition. Okay, so you're having the sense that you're in flexion with one hip and extension with the other. So there's this relationship of all of your muscles coming together to kind of stabilize the sacrum from oppositional forces, from top to bottom on oppositional sides, as well as your hip flexors on oppositional sides. And by top to bottom, I mean the muscles of your back and the muscles of your glutes. They're activated on oppositional sides, and that hugging onto your sacrum from oppositional sides is a really good thing. Okay, rest, and let's change sides. And feel free to have a little bit of movement in between. You can, wag your tail or shimmy your hips around, whatever feels nice. And now we're going to take our left leg straight back behind you, stabilize your core, feel those muscles hug onto your bones, and then reach your right arm out in front of you. Feel the spinal muscles on your right and the glutes on your left kind of merge at your sacrum and hold your sacrum. And then feel the core and the back find their balance to each other. So front and back. And then find your hips finding their balance to each other. One's in flexion, one's in extension. So much hugging onto into your support systems. All right, and then when you're ready, hand and knee comes down, and let's rest in child's pose. Find your back. How is it doing? And then lift up to dog pose when you're ready. Feel that length, feel that space, feel the anchoring of your hands and your feet. Maybe you want to move a bit, maybe you don't. We're going to take our feet to the edges of the mat, turn your toes in, a little internal rotation, and feel the inner thighs roll back. Finding breath. Now, obviously, there's just so much one can do to help nourish your back. These are just a sampling. Okay, walk your feet forward, come up and out of the pose, however is comfortable for your body. And then we're going to take a wide-legged stance with our hands on a wall or on a chair. I'm going to use my furniture here. So my legs are going to come wide. And then I'm going to walk back so that I can have a long spine. So kind of like being in half dog, maybe, if you will. So my feet are pointing straight. You can even turn your feet in just a teeny bit if you want. Thigh bones move back. My spine is really spacious. Breathing well here. Slight inner groin moving back. Find the stabilization so we're not falling in the pose. Find the stabilization. Draw your femur bones back into the back edge of your hips. And then walk your feet closer and walk your feet toward the wall. And come up to stand. And now standing in Tadasana, mountain pose. How's your back feeling? Okay, so usually, you're not, if your back's troublesome to you, doing, an hour of yoga is not going to solve your problems, but it might move you in the right direction where you find, oh, that pose really did release something or help something. And then you gather your own toolbox, right? So your own little care package for when you need it. So let's feel the weight of our feet. Unlock your knees. Notice how you stand. Do you push your pelvis forward? Do you slump your torso? Are your shoulders forward of your hips? See if you can find that same alignment we found when we were sitting. So there's a little bit of core engagement, not locked down, but a little bit of pelvic floor and core engagement. Our knees are unlocked so we feel the ground. Our diaphragm is mobile. Shoulders are slightly back instead of rolling forward. Our ears are over our shoulders. Shoulders are over our hips. Our weight is bared evenly between our 2 feet. So if your tendency is to kind of lean into one foot or cross your arms and like lean your ribs into your arms or all the ways, next time you're at a party and you have a choice, you're standing in a kitchen, even not at a party, maybe you're just at a friend's house and you're standing in a kitchen where everybody always, that's the spot, right? And everybody leans against the countertop, either with your hip or your arm or something. Experiment with, I'm going to be free floating, I'm going to be self-supporting while I'm having engagement in a conversation. When you're in line at the food store, don't lean on your cart. See what you can do to just allow your body to have this grounded self-supportedness. Practice Tadasana through your day. Okay, we're going to move slowly through a vinyasa, just one round of Surya A. Now, I should be really mindful of movements. This can be so good for your back, but remember, those transitions as well. Come to the front of your mat. Take a deep breath in. We're going to reach our arms up. Open, bend your knees if it feels right for you. Come forward. Inhale for a halfway lift. Spine gets long, legs get long. Exhale, let's step our left foot back, come to a lunge. Enjoy your lunge, stretch open through your heart. Let's pause here, we haven't done this pose yet. Let's just pause here, ground your front foot. Feel that oppositional movements just like we did before. Option, if you're feeling really strong in your back, is to take your left arm out in front of you and your right arm back. So we find that all those transitions like bird dog and some of the other oppositional forces bring it into the full body now. And then release your hands down onto the ground. Rise up, reaching the arms up, back heel can be down if that's more supportive for you. And then exhale, hands down onto the ground, dog pose. Find that extension. So of course I can never seem to do just a normal vinyasa, Surya Namaskar. We always have to add some extra little things in there. Come forward into a plank. You can always put your knees down if you want to. Find breath. Lower yourself to the floor. Back bend of your choice. Maybe it's up dog, maybe it's cobra, maybe it's some other pose where you're finding that extension of the spine. Release and relax. Come back up. Find breath. Let's go ahead and find our way back to dog pose. Feel that extension in your spine. Do you like your knees bent? Do you like your feet wide? What feels good to your back? Let's bring our foot forward. Left foot forward. Now remember, this transition can be tricky. So you can always put your knees down and bring your foot forward before coming into the lunge. Sometimes just that swing through can be very aggravating to your back. So make your transitions comfortable for your body. Coming to a lunge on this side, feeling that extension.
Again, you can stay here and just enjoy your legs finding oppositional work. Or if you want to kind of continue that thread of oppositional strength, we can take our right arm forward and our left arm back. Extend your spine, engage your core, press into your feet. Finding your breath. Okay. And then we'll rise up. Everything, arms coming up, only if your body says it's good. Maybe you want your heel down. Is that more supportive for your body, for your back? Then heel up. Check in with your lumbar spine. Make sure you're not compressed and sinking. Hands down onto the ground. Back foot comes forward. Fold. Remember the transitions. A halfway lift. Relax. Climbing all the way up. Arms to the sky. And bring our hands down. So kind of before we come back down onto the ground, how is your back? One more time, checking in. Find your posture. All right, come on to the ground. And we're gonna grab our roll towel. The first thing we're gonna do before our little roll towel spin is a simple reverse pigeon pose. Now, you might choose to put your right thigh over your left thigh and draw your knees in. You might choose to put your right foot on your left knee and draw your knees in. One of the best things I think you can do for your back is to do this pose with your foot against a wall instead of reaching with your arms to grab your hamstring or your shin, because this way your upper body can deeply rest, where you don't have to hold on to anything. It really allows your spine to find good alignment. Breathe your way into whatever pose you're doing, keeping your hips flexible and free and strong. Of course, is supportive for your back. So it's not, the core is what we often go to, like this strong center body, but having our hips be free and strong and mobile absolutely contributes to how we sit, how we walk, how we stand, which, ultimately all the patterns of how we use our back our hips contribute to that. Let's go ahead and change sides. Maybe your left thigh is crossed over your right thigh and your knees are drawn in. Maybe you're in reverse pigeon pose with your left foot on your right knee. Maybe you're like me and chose to put your foot up on something instead of grabbing. Maybe your hands are interclasped on your right leg. Melt your head. Feel your low back. So is it smushed into the ground? Is there a way for you to restore your natural curves here? Can you dip the tail a bit? Can you widen the sit bones? How is your upper body? Is your neck relaxed? Is the weight of your head down, your shoulders soft? Are you able to breathe? Let's release. And maybe a simple windshield wipering. Remember, supine twists are the safest twists. Maybe you just ground your feet for a minute. Maybe your knees come to your chest. What feels good? Try not to just go with what you think you should do or what you habitually do, but really ask your body, does this feel good? Is this the right transition for me? Okay, now hopefully you have a roll towel with 3 rubber bands on it. If not, you can take the next couple of minutes to just kind of do whatever you want to complete your practice before Shavasana. This is the last thing we're going to do before Shavasana. I think most of you have done this with me. I think all of you have done this with me. So just a little bit of a review. It may feel like nothing, but it's actually a lot. We're going to take the rolled towel starting at our shoulder blades, and we're going to take our feet and push off our feet to rock our body crown to tail. So we're rocking on that rolled towel. And then the arm positions, there's 3 of them, or actually 4 of them. Arms straight over our chest, up in the air, straight on top of our chest. And then the second position is our arms overhead. Breathing deeply, rocking by pushing off our feet. Try to keep your pelvis nice and neutral. Hands come back over your chest. And then the third and fourth position are turning your head and your arms over to the one side. You could go right or left first, whatever feels good. And then coming back up and then going to the other side. So basically we're mimicking flexion, extension, and rotation, three of the primary movement patterns of our spine. The only other movement pattern that doesn't really get involved in this sequence is lateral bending. Okay, now we're gonna then move the rolled towel down our spine a little bit so that it's in a little bit lower position in between our shoulder blades. And this is how it goes. We go down the whole spine. Now, one of the things to be very mindful of is how your pelvis is feeling. We try to keep the pelvis really neutral. There's not a lot of pelvic thrusting or rocking. You don't want to be doing a lot of anterior and posterior tilting of the pelvis. Quiet pelvis. So when we push off our feet, our pelvis, we're just transferring the movement through our pelvis into our spine. So if we do a lot of movement in our pelvis, we don't get that beautiful rocking through our vertebrae. So just go as you go and breathing the whole way. This is such a beautiful practice for your to hydrate all of your discs and all of the ligaments and tendons and fascia and muscles. There's so many little ones that connect one vertebrae to the next. So we get to kind of nourish all of those aspects of our vertebrae. We have our whole vertebral column. So, sometimes when you have a ton of time, you can just really luxuriate in this and find your favorite spots and hang out. And this is like, a really good self massage. And then other times you might find that you've only got, a couple minutes and you're just going to do your favorite spots and not do your whole spine. Okay, so this is always available to you. Let it start opening up your breath, especially when you get to that spot along your diaphragm, where the roll towel is on the back side of your diaphragm. This can be such a beautiful way of helping you release some of that tension across your diaphragm, which absolutely can contribute not only to breathing challenges, but to back challenges. Everything's interrelated. We're not going to have a ton of time to do this today. So, maybe do some broad sweeps in your body. If there's a spot that that you absolutely love, then, make sure you get there. And when you do get down to your low back, whenever that arises, sometimes we lose, because of the curves of our spine, we lose the pressure of the rolled towel. And in that case, all you're going to do is just bring your knees to your chest and you're going to forget the arm positions and you're just going to rock a little bit. And you can rock to fro and side side. Okay. And then also, if some spot or you're like, oh, no, that doesn't feel good, you can skip that spot. You can go a little slower and try to figure out why am I having trouble in this one spot. And like I said, you might find a spot where you're like, I'm just going to stay here for 10 minutes. Okay. So there's no rules, but notice as you go if your breathing's starting to change. Notice what you tend to skimp. For some reason, I always skimp going to the left a little bit. So that's a pattern that I have to closely pay attention to in my body. Like, why? Why do I skimp? And, so just pay attention. If there's things you notice, be very curious about why that's happening. And you don't have to have all the answers to what troubles your back. And you just have to be curious, and the answers eventually will start to find their way to you. You may not be complete. You may never know completely what irritates your back, but you might find some help along the way if you just stay aware and curious. And then once you get to your sacrum, and there's no rush, you can skip Shavasana entirely and just keep doing this if you want to.
But when you do get to your sacrum after a couple passes in your low back where you're just holding your knees and rocking, then you can come back to the blanket, okay, or the roll towel rather, underneath you, and put your feet on the ground and just find that rocking again. And you may feel, like I said, stay in any place that feels good. But when you do get to your sacrum, you might feel, oh, I don't need to do the arm positions anymore. There's no point. I'm all the way down here in my sacrum. I won't feel it. But do it anyway, because even though it's not the same amount of engagement as when you had that rolled towel under your neck, there's a lot of connection between the angles of your upper spine and your lower spine. So still do the arm movements when you're rocking on your sacrum. And sometimes just the rocking itself is very soothing. It's just inviting that parasympathetic nervous system to come into play. And then when you're ready to be done, we have a couple of more minutes in class. So if you do want a little bit of Shavasana, let's stop. But maybe you don't care about Shavasana, you just want to keep doing what you're doing. But if you're ready to be still, take the rolled towel out from underneath you. Pause for a moment in the stillness, feet on the ground. Check in with how your back and breath and everything feels. And then if you're comfortable lying flat, you can do that. If you want to grab the blocks to put underneath your knees, you can do that. If you want to put your calves up on a couch or a chair, you can do that. Whatever, a blanket under your knees, anything at all that you need. Stretch and move your body however feels right to you.
And rolling onto your side, very slowly, maybe curl into a little ball. And when you come to sit up, use your arms to help you. The slow transitions, remember those transitions are often where we kind of lose sight of our body mechanics. And then come to a comfortable seat. And just notice, how do you feel? How's your back? How's your breath? Let's place our hands together, our heart. Let's send forth our energy, sending our love and care to another. Namaste. Thank you, everyone.